Hey, welcome to the Lead Well Podcast. Hey, this is Stephen Owens. I'm your host here at the Lead Well Podcast. And listen, we have a great episode lined up for you today. We have LaRick Calhoun, who's here with us. LaRick Calhoun leads the 2Excel group, and he's also the Real Biz Coach. But listen, before we get into the episode, if this is your first time here with us on the podcast, just want to take a moment to explain to you what we do here at the podcast. We talk to leaders from around the world to get their leadership experience and their insight and their wisdom so that we can be able to grow and learn and become better leaders for the glory of Jesus Christ here. But also, if you're interested in staying connected with us, if you want to know more about what we're doing and stay informed, I encourage you to go over to my website at stephenowens.org and sign up for the Lead Well newsletter. And when you sign up, you'll receive a free download of an ebook that I wrote entitled Rescuing Ambition. And listen, we got some exciting news for you. April 3rd and 4th, we have the 2020 Lead Well Conference at Mount Calvary Baptist Church. Listen, it's going to be amazing. I want to encourage you to come on out, bring you and your leadership team, and come on out and be encouraged and take your leadership to the next level. And if you're interested in being able to encourage other leaders as well, I would love for you to partner with us here at the Lead Well podcast, and let's see how we can encourage some future leaders in their development too. Well, all right, let us go ahead and jump into this episode of the Lead Well podcast. All right, see you on the other side. Bye now. All right, LaRick, thanks so much, my man, for coming onto the podcast. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Stephen, for having me on here, man. It's exciting to be back connected and working with yourself on this podcast and sharing a little conversation back and forth around leadership. And I just appreciate the opportunity. I know you go back way back in this topic here, and I'm just looking at your book the other day, Revolutionary Leader, when I was moving some stuff around the house. And I'm just excited and thankful to be a part of this opportunity.
Yeah, for sure, man. So you got LaRick Calhoun, 2Excel Network, and you got the business coaching, or rather the Real Biz Coach. So tell us a little bit about 2Excel. What is that?
All right, well, yeah, 2Excel, we started off in 2003. Our whole mission was to help people to excel, it's in the name, in the area or the arena of real estate at that time. As we all know, during that time, my goal was to empower people through training, education, coaching, consulting, and special events. And in the industry crashed shortly after, around 2007. It crashed, and I ended up having to reinvent our business and turn it into more of a consulting firm where we worked with organizations that were nonprofit and real estate nonprofits, and here locally and nationally, that had the same similar mission, but maybe needed some of my marketing skills or just business skills to help them to further their missions since real estate was out. And then just more recently, over the last few years, the real estate industry started coming back full circle. It's starting to help more people. A lot of people are getting in, and there's a big demand and educational learning curve. And so lo and behold, the mission that was originally set forth back in that time is now back fully needed. The need for education for investors, the need for education for home ownership, the need for education for resources. And that's what we do. So we're back in the game full of stride, and just now 10 years, 15, 10, 13, 14, 15 years later, whatever it is, I've added on the Real Biz Coach side because I do a lot more coaching than I've ever done because of all this experience I picked up over the last 10 years.
Okay. So when you think about the importance of empowerment, the importance of consulting and working with leaders and entrepreneurs, Why do you think leadership is so important?
Well, leadership is very important for a lot of reasons. One of my mentors who recently passed, Lucius Lewis, he used to always say, LaRick, you can't teach what you don't know. You can't lead to where you won't go. And it didn't take me long to understand what he was saying there. What it made me think about in the importance of what you're asking as far as leadership goes is that people have to understand that leadership is about teaching what you've learned, leading to where you've been willing to go yourself. A lot of times we can be selfish about where we want to go ourselves. You know, we want to go learn something. We want to go do something. We want to go be someone. But then we don't know the importance of, or sometimes realize the importance of impact they can have by doing the next thing, which is showing someone else how to do it, which is basically leadership. In Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, he talks about learn it, teach it, do it. As a success principle, and it's really a leadership principle, is you go out and you learn it yourself. That means you've paved the way, and then you immediately turn around and teach it. My mentor used to also say that you can't spray perfume on someone without getting a little bit on yourself. So it galvanized the information inside of you while you're teaching other people. So leadership is important because it also encourages your understanding of what it is that you just got into. A lot of times when people are stepping out into the world of leadership, they don't always know the impact that it'll have on other people. But just when you're out there and you're being humble enough to be able to do it, it does make a major impact. People will follow. They do need it. And the pathway that you've paved is something that people need to go down. And without you opening up your doors or your experience to allow them to see it, a lot of times that level is cut off. You know, something as simple as a third grader that's teaching a second grader the game, or a 16-year-old is getting into their first driver license and now can show a person that's 15 what to do to manage that. That's leadership. So it's very important, and from the smallest to something as tall as running an organization or community.
That's good. That's good. So the whole idea of basically encouraging people to come on this journey with you while you're, going to your destination and sharing what you've learned, but also letting them know that, that they can do it too. That's real
Exactly.
good.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So let's talk a little bit now about your leadership journey. What has that looked like?
So my leadership journey, Stephen, it's been up and down. I wish I could sit here and say that I knew I was a leader from day one, that I just grabbed this thing called leadership out the gate and just started driving it. But it's not that way. It actually, I can date it back to when I was 13 years old, the first time I had an opportunity to know that something was different about me. Didn't call it leadership at this time, but growing up in the neighborhood, calling myself getting into the streets a little bit early through what I knew to be at that point as leaders, influencers in my life that were sharing with me a different way out of the neighborhood, a different way out of the hood. And they put me in touch with the streets. And from there, I went on to work with different buddies in our neighborhood buddies, and we just started working together, doing the same thing, hustling in the street, whatever hustling looked like at that time. And in doing so, I remember one day about a year into my little hustle on the street that it was a gathering downstairs in my 2-family house that I was staying with my mom. And there's a gathering of people downstairs and his parents. I'm like, man, I can hear the chatter. And I'm looking, I'm like, what's going on out there? And I could see it was the parents of my buddies. And I'm like, what in the world is going on outside in this, and she come back in and she is upset. And she said, LaRick, the parents of so-and-so, so-and-so, and so-and-so all have said that you have the whole community selling drugs. And I'm like, what? No, we all were doing it together. What in the world? Who would do that? And I'm all upset. And I could not figure out for the life of me why they would all team up to come and say that I was the one that started. Now, they're not pulling the guy together that got us all out there in it. They're pulling me together. So it took me later on in life to realize that even at the young age of 13, that I had leadership and influence over people and did not even realize it, and those parents did. They knew who house to come to, who was the one that's actually leading it, and I never knew that. A second time I encountered it was when I was, of course, that lifestyle led me to what a lot of people know about to this day, is it led me to the system. I ended up in prison for making those poor choices. And I had a lot of time to think inside there. But in the process of that, I never forget this time when there was this big old, it was a situation where I had a buddy that got into a little bit of a debate, an argument, and some guys jumped on him. And they were in this group that come from the city that they always would just grab people, find them, jump on them. It'd be 20, 30 of them at a time. And they had gotten him. So I come back, Mr. Mediator, want to come back and kind of pull them together and say, look, man, why don't y'all work this out one-on-one? You pick your guy and then y'all can work this out heads up, fist to fist, man to man. Well, that didn't work out so much in my favor. Next thing you know, that same 30, 40 group was waiting on me and looking for me, and they were going to meet me out on the yard that day to make it right. Mm-hmm. So for getting my nose in this business. So that day, I never forget hearing the buzz that was going on, that there was that this group was looking for me. And I didn't know what to do. I knew I had a couple friends. I wasn't affiliated with any gang or anything. And I just had a lot of people that I had just talked to and laughed with and kind of just exercise with or whatever. So I go to walk down on the compound, and all of a sudden I see this swarm of 30 or 40 guys coming from the right. And I say, well, here they come. And it's me, the guy I was defending, and one of our other buddies. It's a total group of 3. When in the process of that, all of a sudden I see an even bigger swarm coming from the left. And it was a mix, unlike this group of one city. It was multiple cities: Indianapolis, Columbus, Cleveland, North Carolina. I never forget to see the size of the group. It was almost 100 men that were coming, and they were coming to diffuse and to protect this one person, LaRick Calhoun. And it blew my mind. The sirens went off. They have these codes they pull off to say it's a riot going down. And the sirens went off. Everybody, next thing you know, the cars was coming out and everything. And I just could not believe that so many people came together around me to help me in a moment that I had no clue. So that was another spark of what I later would learn, that this leadership influence that I didn't really know I had. The third and final one is in the same situation in the system. I was asked to speak for Black History Month. And I was like, well, why would you want me to speak? At that point, I hadn't chosen a religion. I grew up as a Muslim. I was my grandmother was Christian, and I was right in between. I didn't have one way or the other. I was just like, look, I'm just going to sit still and do my time. So I'm like, why don't you get one of the Christian guys, or why don't you get one of the Muslim guys? They know the word. And they said, no, man, everybody's saying that you are positive and you have some great things to say. And I'm like, who's saying that? And to this day, the only thing I can really attribute that to is God had to be saying it, because I really couldn't imagine that many people coming together, having me speak in front of 2,000 men. At that time, I had not spoken in front of men or people. I had actually dropped out of college because I didn't want to speak in front of 8 people. So in the midst of that, I end up speaking in front of those people and the men, and I encouraged them. I made them laugh. I did a phenomenal job, and I didn't know, that I could speak. I didn't know that I could have a word that meant something to so many people. And it was in that moment that I actually knew that something was different about myself, and that when I came home, I was going to utilize that to change my life. And so when I come home, I actually began to utilize my leadership skills. And this is the other part about the journey, is that what I quickly learned is that it wasn't as easy as being picked and not knowing that you're in that seat. I found that at some of the highest points of being in the leader, that you was going to end up being lonely, that you were going to end up sometimes being, they say it's the team's win and the coach's fault. So when you're in the leadership seat, it's your space is going to be constantly targeted for the downswing of things and who you're leading on the upswing of things. I learned that I was going to have to practice it like anything else. If I was going to be a good leader, that I was going to have to be able to understand the dynamics of it and learn and build from that space. I also learned that leadership, and there's a lot of conflicting information out there about this, but I do believe everyone can be trained into leadership, meaning to be better leaders, but I don't think everyone is called to leadership. Some people are just outright called and destined to be the person that makes the command, that leads the way, that people follow because of things that they don't know is inside of them. So that in the journey, I learned that it's something that was stuck to me like a sign on my back saying, you're going to have to do this whether you want to for the rest of your life. And unlike some people that maybe weren't called to it, you're going to have to, and you're going to have to be good at it. Otherwise, it's going to be a long walk. So that journey led me into being more confident around building in my organization, helping more people, starting to speak more, just taking it more serious and peeking into information about leadership. So that journey was just up and down. To this day, is still up and down. It's always building and never-ending journey of becoming better at it. And those are the things I've learned so far and being in a leadership seat.
That's good. So understanding there are moments, right, that exposes you basically to who you are and your
Yes.
giftings.
Yeah.
And I appreciate too the fact you're speaking of influence, right? So when you think about influence and leadership, what are some things that come to your mind about influence and leadership?
All right, so influence is tricky, right? So people know influence to mean that someone has power over something, and they feel like, well, a person has the ability to persuade or things of that nature. When I learned influence, I looked at it from two different ways. I learned influence in my mid-30s, and I was interacting with people on my team. I was trying to build an organization, and to me, again, I'm still new. I just come back at 28 years old. At 30, 31 years old, I'm starting to lead and run an organization. So in the midst of doing this, I'm talking to people, and there's two ways you could communicate with a person. A person can do a one-on-one conversation with you and pour their heart out, and you could pour your heart right back, and you all could be in the same space at the same time, and maybe somber, and some people can have a drink around something that they're just agreeing on. But both parties, or the party that's delivering the situation, may be venting, but they're not allowing the other person to get down into the real problem or into the real heart of what's going on. They're just sharing. But then in the midst of a person that has influence or leadership or that they really trust, they're going to open up and allow a person to go deeper in that same information. They're going to be even more transparent because they're looking for something from you because you have influence over their life or someone else's life, and they're now giving you influence over theirs. When the process of doing that, that's when a person says, you know what, I'm going to let you in. And they don't say this out loud. They just start talking and they start listening from a very high expectation place. And in that moment, you can use your influence for good or bad and not know it if you don't know that you're in a seat of leadership or influence. And you can say something that can cut them, as they say, man, that cut me to the bone. And I remember being in a space where I said something to a person and I may have judged or I may have said something that was insensitive to what they were feeling because I was talking at a surface when they had really let me in to a deep spot. It reminds me of in the medical world where a person touches or physical, they touch on your body and they say, well, does this hurt? No, well, a little bit. It hurts right here. Okay. Well, even in the midst of hurting right here, it's nothing like when they take that scalpel and cut open and then go all the way on the inside. Without the proper tools and understanding where they're going, it can really hurt. So they have to use anesthesia. They have to use all types of things in order to comfort when they go deeper into that moment in order to be able to figure out what's going on, what's paining you. Well, being in an influencer seat, it works the same way. You can actually end up in a space and not know you're deeper inside this person because they opened up and let you go further into their heart, into the situation. And then when you just start talking and responding or judging, that it can hurt like heck. They'll yell. They'll sometimes even hate you because they let you into a very vulnerable spot. So influence is very important. And number one, understand it, because if you don't understand it, then you won't know that someone has let you further in their life than they would have normally let anyone else. The second part that I said to when I'm looking at influence is I watched this when you're in a seat of like, say for instance, in our presidential seat of the United States, or in a pastor's seat, or a basketball player that's like a LeBron James or someone like that, or a professional player of any sport. A lot of times they are in an influencer seat, and they don't really recognize that they're in the influencer seat. They're just playing their game. I've heard many basketball players say, "Look, my role is not to be a role model. I'm here to play the game."
Mm-hmm.
They didn't realize that just merely taking that seat in that position, that by automatically that they were going to be in the seat of influence. And because of that, it was always going to matter. It came with the territory. It matters what the president tweets. It matters what a pastor says to someone about their future or their past. It matters to what a basketball player drinks or said they do in order to encourage their performance. It matters because they're in an influential seat without necessarily knowing it. And sometimes if you don't know it, it could be the worst thing ever when it comes down to people that's being influenced, because there's nothing more sad than a person that's following a person that don't know that they're being followed. So that's another part about influence, and it's just understanding that you need to recognize that you're an influencer as a leader, and also make sure you are doing what you can to make sure that you're always taking that into consideration when you say or do or perform in any type of way.
That's good. So understanding that influence is not just one thing, it can be multifaceted, right? So that those
Yes.
personal conversations, right? Those are times
Right.
of influence, but also when you have your platform and you're speaking from
Right.
the microphone and the camera's on you,
Yep.
right? That's another level of influence.
It
They
is.
don't even know you personally, but they
Yep.
listen to what you say, right? The
Absolutely.
eyeballs are on you. That's good. That's good. All right. So tell me some practical advice that you have for leaders, aspiring leaders. What can you share with us?
Well, the practical advice I'll break down into 3 areas. One of the areas are understanding that leadership practices in everybody's business. It's everybody's business. You have to practice leadership at all levels. Even if you don't consider yourself to be a leader, you should be practicing leadership, because you are in a position where you're going to end up following a leader. And a lot of times people say, well, I'm not a leader. I don't necessarily, all I do is follow. You tell me what you need me to do and I'll do it. But if you don't understand the role of a leader, it can be a very dangerous seat. It could be a very hurtful seat if you don't know what to do, because you don't know the role of leadership. So you don't necessarily know how to support it. It goes along with, you can't teach what you don't know. You can't lead to where you won't go. It works in the reverse as well. So that's one of the things that people should do, is every level should be understanding that they're in leadership and that they need to acknowledge and work on that, even if you're going to be following someone. The leader needs to embrace it as well and begin to do what I call practice. You got to practice in leadership. You have to go in like you're a point guard on a $20 million contract with the hottest basketball team in the league. You have to practice your leadership. You have to practice it. You have to anything worth doing is worth doing poorly, Les Brown would always say. So you're going to not be as good at it in the beginning, but you have to continue to practice and let people know that you are serious about the role that you have as a leader. And just, anything from studying it to looking at YouTube, reading a book. There's books on leadership, like there's books on anything else you want to do. There's YouTube videos that you can utilize to improve your skill. So not just studying it from any level of just being a person coming in as a follower, but from a leadership perspective, you got to practice what you study. Don't just read it, but you got to actually put the practice down so you become better and better at it. And that's the second thing I would say you have to do. Knowing that you are in it and studying it, and then practicing what you study. And then the last thing is balance. Yeah, the balance is going to be very, 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 very important, because in leadership, you're always having to balance what you do. You're balancing the fact that you're in this high seat, which most people have now commanded you as a leader. And a lot of times people can get caught up in their ego being in that seat And as they say, ego is edging God out. So now they're the Lord, they're the God, they're the lead. And now they're not taking instruction from anyone. And they then say, well, I'm only taking instruction from God. And they start just commanding information. Well, I've learned over time to check myself. They say, check yourself before you wreck yourself. And that's really there's no truer statement than that, because I've wrecked myself by not having advisors that were other leaders, peer leaders, sometimes superior leaders that could share with me perspective and help me to make sure I understand what I'm doing. I have to check in. Hey, man, this is my leadership style today. What do you think about that? And one leader say, hey, man, you may need to loosen up on this or come down a little bit more on that. And it's a trusted position, but that helps me to have balance. Understanding that leadership is not only solely in my career, that I may have to make sure I'm balancing leadership between career, my business, my family, my life, my own health on myself. So you could be a leader in your business, but then not be a leader in your own health and lose sight of it. So you have to have a good balancing mechanism. And this is not something I'm saying, Stephen, that it's something I've mastered. It's something that I practice every single day. Over the last 6 months, I've been working toward being a better leader amongst my health, getting into the gym, going to the doctor, speaking with them in their leadership role to help me to understand my body and what I need to do in order for it to last for another 30, 40 years. And that's me being a leader over myself, an influencer over myself. It goes back to, you can't teach what you don't know. You can't lead to where you won't go. So a lot of times people they're so busy leading other people that they forget to lead themselves. So that's in the balance area that I wanted to kind of mention in that. So the practical steps is basically just practice, practice, practice. There's plenty of videos, books, and people that you can associate yourself with to bring it, to bring it to a full head.
That's good. That's good. So become a student of leadership, right? Practice that personal development, getting better at leadership, but then having some people who can speak into your life, right? That balancing piece where it's not just you always talking, but someone talking into you. And I appreciate the fact that you brought up self-leadership, right? Some self-care, right? Seeing where you are, examining yourself. That's real important. So what are some of the things that you're reading now?
So my reading and my audio, I've always been a big audio person, visual person, reading here and there. The books that I read when I'm reading is Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I actually have the 8th habit right here. So I'm usually into these books. I'm also John Maxwell, 360-Degree Leader. This is a phenomenal book for understanding that leadership in itself, something I mentioned one time, is that leadership in itself is not, it's overrated. That at the end of the day, that the leader sits, the real leader is sitting in the middle, and our job as leaders, quote unquote, is to inspire the vision. And there's a video called Dancing Guy on Leadership that talks about that, where it shows the guy getting out there making the leadership moves, and then next thing you know, one person follows, the second person follows, and it's in those people that other people begin to follow that message. And it's so powerful when you play it. You can kind of see the role of the leader was really to spark and do something different that was needed in order to create change. But the real impact was when that first follower came up and started mimicking the step of that leader. So I wanted to mention that because I wanted to mention that earlier. You talk about the importance of leadership, but just circling back around to the books, those 2 books I read, come in and out of them. I also read personal development books because I'm I was always taught, even by Lucius Lewis, that your personal development is even more important than your leadership development. Because if you don't ground yourself and trust and believe in yourself, there's a lot of people I meet that won't go out and step out because they feel like they're not ready or they don't have anything to say, not realizing the power in their one step forward gave somebody a little bit of influence to move forward in that step. So 2 books that I read to help me as a person become more grounded in my purpose to help other people move in theirs was Venice Bloodworth, Key to Yourself. And Venice Bloodworth, Key to Yourself, talked about being able to, it kind of goes back to what you think about most you become. It's like really showing you the power of your own self-thought and how you lead yourself. And then the second one is the How to Succeed in Life by Ned Grossman, who's a local author. My mentor, Lucius Lewis, used to swear by him. He would always have us read his book. And he was just giving you practical principles that they didn't teach us in school that helped us to be able to command power over our own lives, which ultimately helped us to be better as leaders overall. He was a big-time leadership person, Lucius Lewis. But those books I always reference back to your revolutionary leadership book, because I think, I'd be remiss to talk about all these other great books and not put yours in there, because I really respect how long you've been an author. How long has that been?
So I just finished a year ago my fourth book. So a good 7 years I've been writing, and looking towards doing another one here pretty soon. Yeah.
That's huge. That's huge. And that's 7 years, that's a powerful number all in itself. So this is probably a year that we can expect so much more to come out of the work that you put in, which I've always appreciated as a leader. So those are my main books. Dr. Miles Monroe videos. I always play Dr. Miles Monroe videos. There's various books that he have on leadership and vision, and I have some of them I jump in and out of, but those are the main ones that I have that I look into.
Okay, that's good stuff. That's good stuff. When you're speaking of the dancing man, right?
Yes.
What came to my mind was don't despise the days of small beginnings. Because sometimes we look at the big crowds, but really what we should be looking at is who is that one courageous person that said, you know what, I'm gonna follow them. So that's real encouraging. All right, so cool, brother. So let me ask, how can people connect with you? How can they reach out to you?
I'm on Facebook. Facebook.com, Real Biz Coach. It's just the way it's spelled out on my sign behind me, Real Biz Coach. You can also go on Instagram, LaRick Calhoun, LARICK, Calhoun, CALHOUN. You can find that on Instagram or Facebook. If a person's not, or another one on Facebook, I have a community on there called My E Network. So you can just put in Facebook.com/My E Network and like and follow that group. If you're not on the social media, then just go into LaRickCalhoun.com. That's LARICK Calhoun, CALHOUN.com, and you'll find my website page, and you can always connect with me on there.
All right, awesome, man. Well, LaRick, man, I appreciate you coming on, brother. We're gonna definitely have to have you back on the Lead Well podcast. You are encouraging and inspirational, so we'll definitely have you back, bro.
Appreciate it, Stephen, man. I appreciate having the opportunity, man. You come a long way, and I'm just excited to be here. It's my first podcast, and I just appreciate just being able to have the opportunity to do my first one with you. I think I would have been super nervous just being with people that, that I had been invited to be on them before, but I had not accepted. And I accepted yours because of my respect and I have in your leadership. And I felt like if anyone can lead me through, leadership being the key word, or influence me, it will be yourself. And I'm happy for this opportunity, and I look forward to more in the future.
All right, my man. I appreciate you. And we'll be talking soon, all right?
All right. Cool. Thank you.
Hey, I hope you were encouraged by that interview with LaRick Calhoun. I know I was. Hey, I want to encourage you, take time today to register for the 2020 Lead Well Conference. It's going to be April 3rd and 4th at Mount Calvary Baptist Church in Bedford, Ohio. Listen, I encourage you, take some time out today to bring, to register, but also to bring you and your leadership team. I believe you will all be encouraged to take your leadership to the next level. Hey, and if you're interested in developing your leadership skills, if you're interested in having a leadership coach, I would love to be your leadership coach. Hey, reach out to me, send me an email, and let's see how we can work together to help you develop those needed leadership skills. Also, if you're interested in connecting with me on social media, hey, reach out to me. I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, and I'm on Twitter. But I thank you so much for taking this time even to check out the Lead Well podcast. And we don't come to the conclusion of this episode. But let's remember now, leaders must lead well. All right. God bless you. And I'll see you soon. Bye now.